Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was the god of creation. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. Part 1, The White Noise. The universe did not scream when it was born. It hummed. It was a low, resonant frequency, the sound of atoms colliding and bonding, of gravity taking hold, of light separating from the dark. It was the sound of absolute authority. Izuku Midoriya heard that hum for the first time when he was 4 years old, sitting on the crinkling paper of an examination table in Muzurifu General Hospital. The room smelled of antiseptic and lemon cleaner, a scent designed to mask the underlying odor of sickness. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a chaotic, angry sound to Izuku's ears. He swung his legs, his red sneakers bumping against the metal cabinet beneath him. Beside him, Inko Midoriya twisted the hem of her cardigan, her anxiety rolling off her in palpable waves of heat and static. The X-rays are inconclusive, Mrs. Midoriya, the doctor said. He was a round man with thick goggles and a mustache that twitched when he frowned. He held the film up to the light box, tapped it, and then sighed. Or rather, they are technically ruined. Ruined? Inko asked, her voice trembling. Did he move? Izuku, did you wiggle? I didn't, Izuku whispered. He felt heavy. Not tired, but heavy, as if gravity was pulling on him twice as hard as it did on everyone else. He didn't move, the doctor confirmed, sliding the film into a recycling bin. The machine malfunctioned. 3 times. Every time we tried to image his foot to check for the extra toe joint, the film overexposed. It came out completely white. Just blank. The doctor turned to look at the small boy. Izuku looked back. For a second, the doctor felt a primal urge to look away, a biological warning signal flaring in his hindbrain. The boy's eyes were green, large and watery, but there was something behind them, a depth that shouldn't belong to a kindergartner. However, the doctor continued, clearing his throat to dispel the sudden chill in the room. Based on the blood tests and the lack of any external quirk factor manifesting by this age, we have to assume the traditional diagnosis. The overexposure was likely just his body emitting a localized electromagnetic interference. It happens with some minor mutation quirks. But as for a hero-functioning power? No. He swiveled his chair to face them fully. It's better if you give it up, kid. You're quirkless. Or effectively so. You have no specific gene markers for telekinesis like your mother or fire-breathing like your father. You are a blank slate. Blank. The words settled over Izuku like a shroud. Inko started crying. She hugged him, apologizing, her tears hot against his neck. The doctor typed something into his computer, the keys clacking rhythmically. But Izuku didn't cry. He stared at the recycling bin where the ruined X-ray lay. He focused on it. He could feel the plastic sheet inside. He could feel the silver halide crystals embedded in the emulsion of the film. He could feel them vibrating. A voice whispered in the back of his mind. Not a voice, really. An instinct. Order. Inside the bin, unseen by anyone, the overexposed white film shifted. The silver particles danced, rearranging themselves at a molecular level. The white fade vanished, replaced by a perfect, high-definition image of a skeletal foot. But it wasn't a human foot. The bone structure was dense, glowing with a faint lattice of light that physics couldn't explain. Izuku blinked, and the sensation stopped. The hum in his ears faded to a dull throb. I'm sorry, Izuku, his mother sobbed, clutching him tighter. Izuku patted her back, his small hand resting on the fabric of her cardigan. Where he touched, the frayed wool knit itself back together, the microscopic fibers reentwining to look brand new. It's okay, Mom, he said softly. He knew the doctor was wrong. He wasn't empty. He was full. He was so full that he felt like he was going to burst. Part 2, The Container. 10 years later, the feeling of fullness had turned into a constant, aching pressure. Izuku Midoriya walked the halls of Aldera Junior High with his head down and his shoulders hunched. He had learned, through a decade of trial and error, that making himself small was the only way to keep the noise down. Not the noise of the students, though they were loud, but the noise of the world. To Izuku, reality was not a solid thing. It was a suggestion. When he touched his desk, he didn't just feel wood, He felt the cellulose, the lignin, the history of the tree it came from, and the potential for it to be something else. If he concentrated too hard on a pencil, it would turn into a flower. If he got too angry, the air around him would energize into ozone. He was a walking glitch in the matrix, a containment breach waiting to happen. And because the human body was not designed to house a supernova, he was constantly tired. Midoriya, the teacher's voice cut through his haze. Izuku flinched, his head snapping up. Yes, sir? Since you're listening so intently, the teacher sneered, casually tossing a stack of papers onto his desk. Why don't you read the passage on the emergence of quirks? The class giggled. It was a cruelty, asking the quirkless kid to read about the history of power. Izuku stood up. His hands shook as he held the book. The paper felt fragile, as if he could accidentally will it into dust. The first quirk was reported in Xingqing City, Izuku read, his voice quiet. A luminescent baby. Since then, the paranormal became the normal. Dreams became reality. Correct, the teacher said, bored. And society shifted. We are no longer bound by the physics of the old world. We are evolved. He smirked. Well, most of us. DKU. The explosion rocked the room before the sound even registered. Izuku was thrown back into his seat as a palm slammed onto his desk. Smoke curled up, acrid and biting. Katsuki Bakugo stood over him, eyes wild, teeth bared in a feral grin. Don't mutter while you read, you damn nerd, Bakugo hissed. It pisses me off. Izuku hadn't realized he was muttering. He often did it to drown out the hum of the matter around him. Sorry, Kaken. And don't look at me like that, Bakugo growled, leaning closer. The nitroglycerin in his sweat popped and sizzled. Like what? Like you're looking through me. Bakugo hated him. Izuku knew this. But it wasn't the hate of a bully toward a victim. It was something more instinctual. Bakugo was an apex predator, a creature of pure combat instinct, and his instincts told him that the prey in front of him was wrong. Bakugo sensed the anomaly. He couldn't name it, he just called it quirkless and useless, but he feared it. And because Bakugo didn't know how to process fear, he attacked. You're applying to UA, aren't you? Bakugo demanded, grabbing Izuku's collar. The fabric strained. It's free to apply, Izuku stammered. They don't take rejects who can't even light a candle, Bakugo scoffed. He shoved Izuku back. Do yourself a favor. Don't take the exam. You'll die. Izuku looked at Bakugo's hand. He could see the microfractures in Bakugo's skin caused by his own explosions. He could see the stress on the boy's wrist joints. With a single thought, Izuku knew he could fuse Bakugo's hand into a solid block of bone, removing the quirk forever. He could turn the nitroglycerin into water. He could turn the air in Bakugo's lungs into stone. The intrusive thoughts terrified him. Be small, Izuku told himself. Be nothing. Be the null. I just want to try, Kaken, Izuku whispered. Bakugo stared at him for a long, tense moment. Then, he grabbed Izuku's notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future number 13, and clamped his hands around it. Boom! The notebook was charred black, smoking. Bakugo tossed it out the open window. Most top-tier heroes have stories about their school days, Bakugo said, walking toward the door as the bell rang. I want mine to be perfect. Only 1 star from this hellhole. Don't ruin my origin story, Deku. He paused at the door, glancing back. If you want to be a hero that badly, there's a quick way to do it. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray for a quirk in your next life. The class laughed. They filtered out, leaving Izuku alone in the golden afternoon light. Izuku stood up slowly. His hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the effort of holding back. He walked to the window and looked down. His notebook sat in the koi pond, being nibbled by fish. Stupid Kaken, Izuku whispered. He stared at the notebook from 2 stories up. He focused. Just a little. Just a tiny thread of will. Repair. Down in the pond, the carbonized paper reversed its oxidation. The ink unblurred. The water repelled from the pages. The cover knit itself back together, turning from ash to pristine cardboard. It floated there, dry and perfect, defying all laws of nature. Izuku sighed, rubbing his temples where a headache was forming. He walked down the stairs to retrieve it. He couldn't fix his life, but he could fix a notebook. That had to be enough. Part 3. Entropy. The walk home was a gauntlet of noise. The city was loud. Cars, construction, quarks firing off in the distance. Izuku took the underpass, craving the silence of the concrete tunnel. He clutched the restored notebook to his chest. He felt like a fraud. Pray for a quirk in your next life. Maybe you're right, Kaken, Izuku muttered, his voice echoing off the damp walls. Maybe this vessel is just broken. He stopped walking. The manhole cover 5 meters in front of him rattled. It didn't just rattle, it liquefied. The metal dissolved into a dark, viscous sludge that surged upward like a geyser. A medium-sized skin suit. A voice gurgled. It sounded like drowning. Izuku froze. The villain rose from the sewer, a towering mass of muck and sewage, 2 manic eyes floating in the filth. You'll do nicely. Izuku took a step back, his heels scraping the grit. Stay back. I'm just going to take over your body, kid, the villain hissed, lunging forward. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. Then it'll be all over. The sludge crashed into him. It was cold and vile. It forced its way into his nose, his mouth, down his throat. It tasted like oil and rot. Izuku clawed at the fluid, but his fingers passed right through. He couldn't grab it. You couldn't punch water. Can't breathe. His vision blurred. Black spots danced in his eyes. Don't struggle, the villain whispered in his ear, or inside his head. Thanks for the ride. I need to hide from him. Izuku kicked, his legs flailing uselessly. The despair hit him then. It wasn't the fear of death. It was the sheer unfairness of it. After everything? After the bullying, the silence, the holding back? He was going to die in a sewer, drowned by a villain made of garbage? No. His heart hammered against his ribs. The pressure inside him, the fullness he had suppressed for 10 years, began to boil. Stop, Izuku thought. The sludge tightened. I said. Stop. It wasn't a scream from his throat. It was a command from his soul. Crack. A sound like a gunshot echoed through the tunnel. It wasn't a gun. It was the sound of reality fracturing. Golden light erupted from Izuku's skin. It didn't glow, it bled. Veins of brilliance tore through his school uniform, racing up his neck, across his cheeks. It looked like his skin was cracking porcelain, revealing a sun beneath. The sludge villain shrieked. What? What is this heat? Izuku's eyes snapped open. The green irises were gone, replaced by glowing white voids. He didn't need oxygen anymore. He didn't need lungs. He was the architect of the air. Izuku reached up and grabbed the sludge covering his face. Before, his hands had passed through. Now, his fingers dug in. He wasn't touching the liquid. He was touching the concept of the liquid. You represent filth, Izuku spoke. His voice was layered, a chorus of 1,000 harmonics speaking at once. It shook the concrete walls. You represent decay. Let go! The villain screamed, trying to pull away, but he was anchored. The boy wasn't just holding him. The boy was rewriting him. I decline your existence, Izuku said. He squeezed. A shockwave of pure creation energy blasted outward. The sludge didn't explode. It didn't evaporate. It changed. The foul smell of sewage vanished instantly, replaced by a scent so sweet it was dizzying, springtime, heavy and fragrant. The dark green slime turned pink. Soft. Petal-like. The villain screamed as his body lost its cohesion, not melting, but blooming. In a swirl of impossible wind, the massive sludge monster shattered into 1,000,000 cherry blossom petals. They swirled around Izuku in a vortex, a blizzard of pink against the gray concrete. The villain was gone. There was no consciousness left, no malice. Just flowers. A pile of cherry blossoms 3 feet deep, carpeting the tunnel floor. Izuku stood in the center of the floral drift. The white light in his eyes faded, returning to green. The golden cracks on his skin dimmed, but they didn't disappear. They remained as faint, shimmering scars running up his arms and disappearing under his collar. Golden kintsugi tracing the fault lines of a vessel that had held too much power. He gasped, dropping to his knees. The air tasted of pollen. What? Izuku looked at his hands. They were trembling violently. What did I do? Clank. The manhole cover flew into the air again. Never fear. For I am. All Might exploded out of the sewer system, striking a heroic pose. His smile was plastered on, his fists ready for combat. Here, All Might blinked. He had been chasing a fluid villain. He was expecting a hostage situation. He was expecting a fight. Instead, the symbol of peace found himself standing in a surreal, impossible garden. The tunnel was filled with cherry blossoms. It looked like a scene from a fantasy movie, and in the center of the petals, a small boy in a middle school uniform was curled up, shivering. All Might's smile faltered. He dropped his guard, confused. He looked around. No villain. Just flowers. Young man? All Might stepped forward, his massive boots crunching on the soft petals. Are you uninjured? The villain, where did he go? Izuku looked up. His face was pale, streams of tears cutting through the grime on his cheeks. I think. Izuku's voice cracked. He held up a hand, and a single petal drifted from his palm. I think I turned him into a tree. All Might stared. He looked at the petals. He looked at the boy. Then he saw the scars. The faint, golden lines tracing up the boy's arms were pulsing with a heartbeat that wasn't blood. All Might had possessed one for all for decades. He had met heroes with quirks that could move mountains, freeze oceans, and fold time. He knew power, but looking at Izuku Midoriya, Toshinori Yagi felt a chill go down his spine that had nothing to do with danger. It was the feeling one gets when standing at the edge of a massive cliff, or looking into the depths of space. It was awe and terror. My boy, All Might whispered, the persona dropping for a fraction of a second. What are you? Izuku's eyes rolled back in his head. The adrenaline crash hit him like a freight train. He collapsed forward into the flowers. Wait! All Might surged forward, catching the boy before he hit the ground. The boy was burning up. His skin felt like touching the hood of a car that had been sitting in the sun. All Might looked around the tunnel again. The sludge villain was effectively dead, or transformed into non-sentient organic matter. A quirk that could transmute living matter on this scale? Instantaneously? Without an exchange of mass? It breaks the laws of physics, All Might thought, hoisting the boy into his arms. He looked at the boy's face, peaceful in unconsciousness. This isn't a quirk, All Might realized with a heavy sinking feeling in his gut. This is a miracle. And miracles are dangerous things. Part 4, The Golden Cracks. Izuku woke up to the sound of beeping. For a moment, he hoped he was back in the hospital at age 4, and the last 10 years had been a bad dream. Maybe the doctor would come in and say, "Good news. You have a telekinesis quirk. You can float small objects." But when he opened his eyes, he wasn't in a hospital. He was in a room he didn't recognize. It looked like a police break room or a high-end infirmary. There was a comfortable couch, a vending machine in the corner, and a window overlooking the sunset. He tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through his arms. He hissed, looking down. His arms were bandaged. Heavy gauze was wrapped from his fingertips to his shoulders. Through the white fabric, a faint golden light pulsed rhythmically. Careful, a deep voice said. Your skin is fragile right now. Izuku froze. He turned his head slowly. Sitting on a folding chair in the corner of the room was a skeleton. No, not a skeleton. A very tall, very emaciated man with wild blonde hair and sunken eyes. He was wearing a baggy white t-shirt that hung off his sharp shoulders. Who are you? Izuku asked, his voice raspy. The man sighed, and then, in a puff of steam, he expanded. Muscles inflated, the jaw squared, and the hair stood up. I am. The man coughed, blood spurting from his mouth, and deflated back into the skeleton form instantly. Not doing that right now. Too tired. Izuku's jaw dropped. All Might? In the flesh. Or what's left of it, the man muttered, wiping his mouth with a handkerchief. He looked at Izuku with intense, serious blue eyes. Midoriya Izuku. Age 14. Quirk status, registered quirkless. Izuku flinched. I can explain. I didn't lie. The doctor said. I know what the doctor said, All Might interrupted gently. I had Detective Sakachi pull your file while you were out. Undefined anomaly. That was the note on the X-ray. All Might leaned forward, clasping his bony hands together. Young Midoriya, Do you know what you did in that tunnel? Izuku looked down at his bandaged hands. The villain, he was suffocating me. I just wanted him to stop being sludge. I wanted him to be something harmless. Something nice. Cherry blossoms, All Might said. You turned 100 kilograms of sentient sewage into Prunus serrulata petals. Detective Tsukachi confirmed it. There is no trace of the villain's DNA left, just plant matter. Did I kill him? Izuku asked, his voice trembling. Philosophically? Maybe, All Might mused. Biologically? You didn't kill him, you unmade him. You rewrote his atomic structure. The room was silent. Why am I here? Izuku whispered. Are you going to arrest me? No, All Might said. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city bathed in twilight. I have been looking for a successor, Midoriya. For a long time, I have been looking for someone with the heart of a hero to inherit my power. Izuku's heart skipped a beat. Inherit? But All Might turned back, his face grim. I cannot give you my power. Izuku felt the familiar sting of rejection. Of course. Even now. Even after the flowers. Because, All Might continued, pointing a long finger at Izuku's chest, you are already full. Your vessel is overflowing. If I gave you one for all, you would explode. Not metaphorically. You would cease to exist. All Might walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. I saw your skin cracking, my boy. That light, it's trying to get out. You are a human trying to hold on to the power of a god. And it is breaking you. Izuku gripped the sheets. I don't want to be a god. I just want to be a hero. Like you? A hero saves people, All Might said softly. You saved yourself today. That is the first step. But this power, it is not something UA is equipped to handle. It is not something society is equipped to handle. So I can't go to UA? Izuku asked, tears welling up. All Might smiled, a small, genuine smile that didn't require muscle form. On the contrary. You must go to UA. If you stay out here, unregistered, unchecked, you will either destroy the world by accident, or someone very evil will try to use you to do it on purpose. All Might placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Even through the bandages, Izuku felt the warmth. I will train you, All Might said. Not to inherit my quirk, but to control yours. We need to build your body, Midoriya. We need to make this vessel strong enough to contain the ocean you carry inside it. Izuku looked at the skeletal man. For the first time in 10 years, the crushing weight in his chest felt a little lighter. He wasn't being dismissed. He was being seen. Can I? Izuku sniffled. Can I really be a hero? With a power that hurts me? I hurt every day, All Might said, gesturing to the scar on his side. Pain is part of the job. But yes. You can be a hero. All Might's eyes narrowed slightly, serious and sharp. But you must understand one thing, Izuku. You are not just a hero candidate. You are a singularity. Today, you created a garden in a sewer. Tomorrow? You might accidentally create a star in a classroom. We are going to have to be very, very careful. Izuku nodded. He looked at his hands again. He focused. A single, small cherry blossom petal materialized in the air above his palm, glowing with soft light. It drifted down and landed on All Might's knee. I'll try, Izuku promised. Part 5. The Other Side of the Coin. Miles away, in a dark, dusty bar, a monitor flickered to life. Sensei, a raspy voice spoke from the shadows. A young man with pale blue hair and dry, scratching skin sat hunched over the counter. The slime villain, he's gone. His signal just vanished. From the monitor, a distorted voice replied. It was deep, ancient, and sounded like the closing of a coffin lid. Vanished Tamura? Or destroyed? Gone, Tamura. Shigaraki scratched at his neck, his red eyes narrowing. The sensors picked up a massive energy spike. But it wasn't a quirk signature I recognize. It wasn't All Might. Interesting, the voice mused. The doctor said the charts were shifting today. He said the equilibrium of the world was disturbed. Tamura frowned. Equilibrium? Creation and destruction, Tamura. They are a seesaw. If one side rises, the other must rise to meet it. The voice on the monitor chuckled, a dark, velvet sound. It seems you have a playmate, Tamura. Somewhere out there, someone has just awakened. Work harder. I want you ready to meet him. Tamura Shigaraki stopped scratching. He placed his hand on the bar counter. His pinky finger lowered. Crumble. The solid wood disintegrated into dust under his touch. I'll be ready, Tamura whispered. And then I'll turn him to dust, just like everything else. Part 1. The Architecture of Silence. The ocean did not look like water to Izuku Midoriya. It looked like an equation. Standing on the edge of Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, the wind whipping his unruly green hair across his face, Izuku tried to ignore the data streaming into his brain. He looked at the waves crashing against the accumulated trash of the coastline, and he didn't see foam. He saw hydrogen and oxygen bonds vibrating. He saw salt lattices dissolving. He saw the kinetic energy transferring from the moon's gravitational pull into the fluid dynamics of the tide. Focus on the tire, young Midoriya. The shout broke his trance. Izuku blinked, the glowing white diagram of the universe fading from his vision, replaced by the mundane reality of a rusted truck tire half buried in the sand. Standing atop a pile of refrigerators was All Might. The hero wasn't in his muscle form. He couldn't maintain it for long these days. But his skeletal presence still commanded the horizon. He wore a yellow tracksuit that hung loosely on his frame, a stopwatch in his hand. Stop listening to the sand, All Might called out, his voice carrying over the wind. The sand is fine. It doesn't need your help. Move the tire. Izuku sighed, wiping sweat from his forehead. He gripped the rubber of the tire. Change me. The tire whispered. It wasn't a voice. It was a potentiality. The rubber molecules were bored. They yearned to be something else. They suggested, quite politely, that they would be much happier as a flock of crows, or perhaps a nice, solid diamond. No, Izuku gritted out between his teeth. You are a tire. Stay a tire. He heaved. His muscles, sore and burning from 6 months of hellish physical conditioning, screamed in protest. He dragged the heavy rubber object across the sand, his heels digging into the grit. Good! All Might shouted. Use your muscles! Build the vessel! Izuku hauled the tire to the designated pile and collapsed, gasping for air. He looked at his hands. They were calloused now, rougher than they had been a few months ago. But more importantly, the golden cracks, the kintsugi scars that ran up his forearms, were dim. The urge is getting quieter, Izuku panted as All Might climbed down from his perch. That is because your body is getting louder, All Might said, handing him a bottle of water. When we started, you were a paper cup trying to hold a gallon of magma. Now? You are, perhaps a ceramic mug, still fragile, Izuku muttered, taking a drink. The water tasted metallic. He had to concentrate to keep it liquid. If he relaxed too much, he might accidentally turn it into wine. Or mercury. Better than paper, All Might countered. He looked at the beach. In 6 months, Izuku had cleared half of it. But he hadn't cleared it by disintegrating the trash or turning it into butterflies. He had done it by hand. Lifting. Dragging. Hauling. It was the only way to teach Izuku the value of persistence over immediacy. Tomorrow is the exam, All Might said, his tone shifting to something more serious. Are you ready? Izuku looked at the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of violet and burnt orange. To Izuku, the colors were just refraction angles, but he forced himself to see the beauty instead of the math. I don't know, Izuku admitted. I can control it when I'm calm. But if I panic? If I get scared? Then you remember the feeling of the sand, All Might said, placing a bony hand on Izuku's shoulder. Ground yourself? You are not the creator, Izuku. You are a boy. You are a student. You are human. Izuku looked at the scar tissue glowing faintly under his skin. I'll try to remember that, he whispered. Part 2, The Threshold. The morning of the UA entrance exam was crisp and bright. The sky was a piercing blue, a color that Izuku knew was caused by Rayleigh scattering, but today, he just decided to call it hopeful. He stood at the massive gates of UA High School, clutching the straps of his yellow backpack. The structure was imposing. The H-shaped building gleamed in the sunlight, a monument to heroism. Students streamed past him. Some had mutations, feathers, horns, extra limbs. Others looked normal but radiated hidden power. Izuku felt the hum of the campus. The concrete of the path was reinforced with a specific polymer blend to withstand heavy impacts. The glass in the windows was bulletproof. The very air here tasted of ozone and ambition. Don't trip, Izuku told himself. Just walk. Left foot, right foot. He took a step, caught his toe on a slightly uneven paver, and pitched forward. Gravity, he thought instantly. 9.8 meters per second squared. Time seemed to slow. He could stop the fall. He could simply delete the gravity around him. He could turn the pavement into a trampoline. He could grow wings. The options scrolled through his mind like a computer menu. No. Be human. He braced for impact, closing his eyes. But the impact never came. He floated. Are you okay? Izuku opened his eyes. He was hovering 2 inches off the ground. Beside him, a girl with a round face and chestnut hair was smiling. Her fingertips were pressed together. I stopped you with my quirk, she said cheerfully, releasing him. He dropped gently to his feet. Sorry I didn't ask first. But it would be bad luck to fall right at the gate, right? Izuku stared at her. He felt lighter. Not just physically, but metaphysically. Her quirk manipulated gravity, stripping away the weight of the world. For someone like Izuku, who felt the weight of every atom in the universe pressing down on him, her presence was like a cool breeze in a furnace. Thanks, Izuku stammered. I'm Uraraka Ochako. She beamed. You look nervous. I am too. My stomach is doing flips. She mimed an explosion with her hands. Good luck. She waved and ran off toward the building. Izuku stood there stunned. He touched his chest. The hum in his head, the constant voice of matter begging to be changed, had quieted down for a second when she touched him. She's quiet, Izuku whispered. Get out of the way, Deku. The piece shattered. Bakugo Katsuki stomped past him, shoulders hunched, hands in his pockets. He didn't look at Izuku. He looked straight ahead, his eyes focused on the prize. Don't think just because you fixed the notebook you belong here, Bakugo growled as he passed. The exam isn't about fixing things. It's about breaking them. Izuku watched his childhood friend walk away. Bakugo was right, in a way. Heroism often required destruction. You had to break the villain to save the civilian. You had to smash the rubble to clear the path. But Izuku wasn't a breaker. He was a maker. We'll see, Kaken, Izuku murmured, tightening his grip on his backpack. We'll see. Part 3, the written word. The written exam was excruciating, not because it was hard, but because the pencil kept trying to turn into a snake. Izuku had to hold the wooden utensil with the lightest possible grip. Every time he stressed over a question, like the one about the legality of quirk usage in public spaces, his anxiety would leak out. The yellow paint on the pencil would start to ripple, turning into gold scales. The graphite tip would soften into a forked tongue. Stop it, Izuku mentally scolded the pencil. Be wood. Be carbon. He forced the object to stabilize. By the time the written portion was over, Izuku was exhausted. He felt like he had run a marathon. While other students were chatting about the math questions, Izuku was mentally reinforcing the structural integrity of his desk to keep it from turning into a pile of chocolate pudding. Then came the orientation. Present Mike was loud. His voice was a physical force, sound waves compressing the air. Izuku found it fascinating. He could see the waves rippling through the auditorium. Welcome to the live performance. Mike screamed. Izuku tapped his notebook, trying to pay attention to the rules. 3 types of robots. Points based on difficulty. Excuse me. A tall boy with glasses and blue hair stood up in the middle of the auditorium. His posture was rigid, his hand chopping the air like a blade. The pamphlet says there are 4 types of villains. If this is a misprint, you should be ashamed. And you, the boy spun around, pointing a finger directly at Izuku. You've been muttering this whole time. It's distracting. If you're here to mess around, you should leave. The auditorium went silent. Eyes bored into Izuku. He shrank into his seat. He hadn't been muttering about the exam. He had been muttering the atomic weight of the seats to keep them from levitating. Sorry, Izuku squeaked. Okay, examinees. Present Mike waved his hands. The 4th robot is a 0-pointer, Think of it like a gimmick in a video game. It's an obstacle. No points. Just run away, Izuku thought. I can do that. Part 4, Battle Center B. The mock city was massive. It was a perfect replica of an urban district, complete with paved streets, multi-story buildings, and streetlights. Izuku stood in the crowd of examinees at Gate B. He saw Uraraka nearby, taking deep breaths. He saw the boy with glasses, Ida, stretching his calves. Izuku wore a green tracksuit. He had no support gear. Just his body and the terrifying singularity living under his skin. And start! Present Mick's voice blared from the towers. There are no countdowns in real battles. Run! Run! Die! I mean go! The crowd surged forward. Izuku was buffeted by shoulders and elbows. He stumbled, nearly falling, but caught his balance. By the time he entered the city, the main street was already a war zone. Explosions rocked the air. A boy with a laser navel blasted a one-pointer. A girl with vines for hair dismantled a two-pointer. Izuku ran down an alleyway, his heart pounding. I need points. I need to destroy something. A three-pointer, a massive, treaded robot with missile launchers, turned the corner. Its red optical sensor locked onto him. Target acquired, the machine droned. It lunged. Izuku dodged, diving behind a dumpster. The metal claw of the robot smashed into the pavement where he had just been standing. Think. He couldn't use his quirk to blow it up. He didn't have an explosion quirk. He didn't have super strength, not without using creation energy to reinforce his muscles, which was dangerous. He looked at the dumpster. It was made of galvanized steel. Weapon, Izuku commanded. He slapped his hand against the side of the dumpster. Shift. The metal groaned. In a blink, the dumpster unraveled. The steel plates twisted, elongated, and sharpened. Within a second, the dumpster was gone. In Izuku's hand was a 6-foot-long steel bow staff, perfectly balanced, the end tapered to a spear point. The robot charged again. Izuku didn't think, he moved. He jammed the steel staff into the robot's tread mechanism. Fuse. He touched the staff. The atoms of the staff merged with the atoms of the robot's gears. The metal became one solid, seized lump. The robot screeched, its treads locking up. It tipped over, crashing into the wall. Izuku panted, backing away. He hadn't destroyed it, but he had immobilized it. Does that count? He wondered aloud. Nice assist. A student yelled, running past and blasting the immobilized robot's head off. Thanks for the setup. Wait! Izuku cried. That was my point, but the boy was gone. It continued like that for 10 minutes. Izuku was too hesitant. He would create a barrier to stop a robot, and someone else would smash it. He would trap a robot in quicksand, created from the asphalt, and someone else would finish it off. He had 0 points. The buzzer was approaching. His dream was slipping through his fingers like water. 2 minutes left. Present Mick's voice echoed. Izuku stood in the middle of a ruined intersection. He was covered in dust. His kintsugi scars were throbbing, a dull golden ache spreading up his neck. I'm going to fail, he realized. All might train me for nothing. Then, the ground jumped. It wasn't a vibration. It was an earthquake. Buildings swayed. Glass shattered. A shadow fell over the city, blotting out the sun. Izuku turned slowly. Rising from the center of the district was a nightmare. The 0-pointer. It was colossal, easily taller than the skyscrapers around it. Its green paint was chipped, its chassis bristling with demolition gear. It looked less like a robot and more like a moving mountain. Targets detected, the voice boomed. It was so loud it vibrated in Izuku's chest. The other students screamed. It's huge! Run! This is insane! The crowd broke. They fled in the opposite direction, a stampede of panic. Izuku turned to join them. His instincts screamed at him to run. Be human. Survive. Ow! The sound cut through the panic. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Uraraka lay trapped under a pile of rubble. A piece of a building had fallen when the 0-pointer smashed through a wall. Her leg was pinned. She was struggling, her face pale, trying to use her quirk on the massive slab of concrete, but she was exhausted. The 0-pointer loomed over her. Its massive tread lifted, ready to crush the debris, and her along with it. Izuku didn't think. The hum in his head, the one he had been suppressing all day, the one he had been fighting for 10 years, suddenly roared. Creation is not passive, the voice said. Creation is an act of defiance. Izuku ran. He ran toward the monster. He ran toward the death machine. Midoriya, don't! Ida shouted from the safety of the exit gate. Izuku didn't hear him. He felt the wind against his face. He felt the golden cracks on his skin splitting open. The pain was blinding, but the power was exhilarating. He didn't have a strength quirk. He couldn't punch this thing. He couldn't lift it. He leaped. He used a burst of creation energy to create a pillar of air under his feet, launching himself upward. He soared through the dust clouds, higher and higher, until he was level with the zero-pointer's face. The robot's red eyes focused on him. A mechanical hand swatted at him like a fly. Izuku extended both hands. I am the architect, Izuku whispered. He slammed his palms against the cold, green metal of the robot's faceplate. Intelligent design. The world turned white. Part 5, The Miracle. In the observation room, a cup of tea shattered. Mizu, the principal of UA, had dropped it. He didn't notice. He was standing on his chair, his paws pressed against the glass, staring at the screen for Battle Center B. What? Aizawa Shota murmured, his dry eyes wide. What is that? On the screen, the zero-pointer was not exploding. It wasn't crumbling. It was flowing. Where Izuku touched the metal, a wave of gold transmutation rippled outward. It moved faster than the eye could track. The rusted steel, the wires, the circuitry, the glass, it all lost its rigidity. It became like liquid mercury, swirling and dancing in the air. The massive robot dissolved. But it didn't fall apart. The matter swirled around the small boy suspended in the air. The tons of steel and copper obeyed his will. In a silence that was deafening, the matter reformed. It didn't reform into a robot. The legs fused together. The treads smoothed out into flowing robes of iron. The demolition claws reshaped into muscular arms crossed over a broad chest. The boxy head morphed, the metal stretching and smoothing until it formed a face with a smile. With a sound like a massive gong being struck, the transformation finished. Standing in the middle of the city, towering over the buildings, was no longer a villain bot. It was a statue. A perfectly detailed, 300-foot-tall statue of All Might, made of gleaming, polished steel and copper. It stood in a pose of protection, shielding the girl on the ground. The statue was so perfect it looked alive. The hair was made of bundled copper wires. The eyes were the robot's red sensors, now repurposed to look like glowing pupils of justice. Izuku hung in the air for a second longer, his hand resting on the statue's nose. Then, gravity remembered him. He fell. Part 6, The Fall. Izuku was unconscious before he began to descend. The energy required to transmute that much mass had nearly killed him. The golden cracks on his body were no longer faint lines. They were glowing fissures. His right arm, the one that had channeled the most power, looked like it was made of broken glass held together by light. He plummeted toward the pavement. Slap. A hand touched his cheek. Uraraka, freed from the rubble because the robot had ceased to push down on the debris, floated on a piece of broken concrete. She had slapped him. He stopped falling just inches from the ground. Release! She gasped, pressing her fingers together. They both collapsed onto the asphalt. Uraraka vomited, her quirk overuse hitting her instantly. Izuku lay still. The golden light faded slowly, leaving his arm blackened and bleeding, the skin torn in jagged patterns. The silence in the battle center was absolute. Slowly, students began to creep out from their hiding spots. They looked at the massive, shining statue of All Might that now dominated the skyline. It reflected the sun, blindingly bright. Did? One student whispered. Did he just turn the robot into art? He didn't destroy it, Ida said, walking forward, his glasses askew. He looked at Izuku's broken body. He converted it. Time's up. Present Mick's voice cracked over the speakers. He sounded shaken. The exam was over. Part 7, The Tribunal. The teacher's lounge was usually a place of relaxation. Today, it was a war room. The footage of Battle Center B was paused on the main screen. It showed the moment of transmutation. The light. The impossible reconstruction of matter. It violates the laws of thermodynamics, ectoplasm said, his voice grim. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. But he didn't just rearrange the matter. He changed its density. He changed its molecular composition. He turned rubber tires into solid iron boots. It's not a transformation quirk, Cementos added. I manipulate cement. I have to touch it, and I can only change its shape. I can't turn cement into steel. This kid, he turned a microchip into a copper wire. He ignored the periodic table. Aizawa sat in the corner, his capture weapon loose around his neck. He looked tired. He's a liability, Aizawa said bluntly. Look at his arm. He nearly blew it off. If he loses control, he won't just break a bone. He could erase the school, or he could save the world, a small voice piped up. Nisa sat at the head of the table. He was drinking a fresh cup of tea. His beady black eyes were gleaming with a terrifying intelligence. We have seen destroyers before, Nisa said. All Might is a destroyer of evil. Endeavor is a destroyer. Even you, Aizawa, you destroy quirks. But a creator? Nisa gestured to the screen. We have never seen a creator. This is a Genesis-level event. If we expel him, or reject him, what happens? The villains get him, Midnight whispered. Imagine if All for One got his hands on someone who can make gnomes out of thin air. The room shuddered. Precisely, Nisa nodded. He must be admitted. Not just because he saved the girl, which he did, magnificently, but because we are the only ones who can build a cage strong enough to keep him safe. A cage? All Might spoke up. He was standing by the door, in his skinny form. He looked guilty. He is a child, Principal. Not a monster. He is a god in a child's body, Toshinori, Nisa said softly. We will treat him with kindness. We will teach him ethics. But make no mistake. We are not just teaching him how to be a hero. Nisa took a sip of tea. We are teaching him how not to accidentally rewrite reality because he had a bad day. Part 8. The letter. 1 week later, Izuku lay on his bed. His right arm was in a heavy cast. Recovery Girl had healed the worst of it, but she had scolded him for an hour. My quirk speeds up cell regeneration, she had said, looking at his glowing scars with fear. But your cells aren't just damaged. They're unstable. I can't heal reality, Sonny. He stared at the ceiling. He had failed. He had 0 villain points. He had destroyed nothing. He had only created a statue. A very big statue, sure, but that wasn't the objective. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered. Inko opened the door gently. She looked terrified but hopeful. Izuku? A letter came. From Yue. She handed him the envelope. It felt heavy. Izuku sat up. He took a deep breath. He tore it open. A holographic disc slid out. It beeped, and a projection flared to life. I am here. All Might appeared in the hologram, wearing his yellow suit. He was posing in front of a white background. Young Midoriya. All Might boomed. You have been waiting. And I am sorry for the delay. I had to argue with the board of directors. It was quite a heated debate. Izuku's heart sank. Argue? That means they didn't want me. You scored 0 villain points. All Might shouted. A terrible score. Historically bad. You failed to destroy a single enemy. Izuku closed his eyes. However, the hologram shifted. A video played. It was Uraraka, standing in the UA office. Please, she was saying. Give him my points. He saved me. He made the robot stop. He turned it into All Might. You can't fail him, Izuku gasped. You have a strange power, young Midoriya. All Might's voice returned. You did not defeat the villain. You redeemed it. You turned a weapon of war into a symbol of peace. The screen flashed. Rescue points, 60. This is a hero course. All Might declared. And saving people is the essence of heroism. 60 points. You pass. Izuku started to cry. Big, fat tears that turned into tiny pearls as they rolled down his cheeks and hit the floor with soft plinks. But a warning! All Might leaned close to the camera, his face losing the smile. The judges were disturbed. You showed them a power that frightens them. You are on probation, Midoriya. One slip up, one accidental erasure of a fellow student, and you are out. All Might reached a hand toward the camera. But for now. Welcome, Izuku Midoriya. Welcome to your hero academia. The hologram faded. Izuku sat in the dark room, surrounded by tiny pearls on the floor. He picked one up. It was smooth, perfect, and glowing faintly. He squeezed it tight. I'm in, he sobbed. I'm in. Part 9, The Observer. On the roof of UA, Aizawa Shota stood looking at the campus. In the distance, the cleanup crews were still working on Battle Center B. They had decided not to remove the statue. It was too heavy to move, and too dense to cut apart. They were just going to leave it there as a landmark. A statue, Aizawa muttered, sipping a jelly pouch. It's beautiful, isn't it? Aizawa didn't turn. He knew the voice. It was Nizu, popping out of his scarf. It's terrifying, Aizawa corrected. He built that in 3 seconds. What happens if he decides to build a prison? Or a bomb? Then you will stop him, Nizu said cheerfully. That is why you are his homeroom teacher, Eraserhead. You are the only one who can look at a god and say no, Aizawa sighed. He looked at the acceptance list on his phone. Class 1A, Seat 18, Midoriya Izuku. Quirk, Genesis. I'm going to need more coffee, Aizawa groaned. Part 1 Kintsugi. The morning of the first day at UA High School, Izuku Midoriya spent 45 minutes staring at his tie. It was red. It was polyester. It was a simple knot. But to Izuku, it was a swirling nebula of potential energy. The synthetic fibers whispered to him, suggesting that they could very easily become a red snake, or perhaps a stream of molten lava, or, if he wasn't careful, a noose. Just be a tie, Izuku whispered, his fingers trembling as he fumbled with the knot. Please. Just be an inanimate object for today. He managed to tie it, though it was crooked. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. The boy staring back didn't look like a god. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, a testament to the insomnia that came with hearing the walls of his bedroom discuss their structural integrity all night. But the most striking thing was the gold. He rolled up the sleeves of his uniform. The scars from the entrance exam hadn't faded to white like normal tissue. They remained as jagged, glimmering lines of gold running from his fingertips up to his elbows. They looked like kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold lacquer. The message was clear: this vessel has been broken. It has been put back together. But it is not the same. Izuku! You're going to be late. Inko's voice drifted from the kitchen. Coming, Mom! He hastily pulled his sleeves down, buttoning the cuffs tight. He grabbed his yellow backpack. He took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the apartment. Toast, old paper, and the distinct metallic tang of his own skin. Don't break the school, he told himself. Don't rewrite reality. Just be a student. He stepped out the door. The world was loud. Part 2, The Anomalies of 1A. Class 1A was behind a massive door. It was ridiculously tall, presumably to accommodate students with gigantification quirks, but to Izuku, it felt like the entrance to a temple. He stood there, hand hovering over the handle. He could feel the wood grain. Oak. Dense. Varnished with polyurethane. Get your feet off the desk. Ha! You think you can tell me what to do, Four Eyes? Izuku flinched. He knew those voices. He slid the door open. Tenya Ida was chopping the air in front of Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo was reclining with his feet on the desk, looking like he wanted to murder the furniture. When the door opened, the room went silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned to Izuku. It wasn't the usual silence of a new student arriving. It was the heavy, thick silence of people looking at a natural disaster that had learned to walk. It's him, a boy with red hair whispered to a guy with tape elbows. The statue guy. The alchemist, a girl with earphone jacks corrected. Ida spun around. Midoriya! You are here! He marched over, his movements stiff and robotic. I must apologize. I misjudged you at the exam. I thought you were muttering to be disruptive, but you were calculating a transmutation of epic proportions. I salute your superior perception. It wasn't really calculations, Izuku stammered, shrinking into his shoulders. It was just feelings. Feelings. Ida nodded gravely. Intuition. Even more impressive, Deku. The growl came from the back of the room. Bakugo hadn't taken his feet off the desk. He was staring at Izuku with red eyes that were unusually narrow. There was no explosion in his palms today, just a tight, white-knuckled grip on his pants leg. Keikaken, Izuku greeted, his voice small. You're here, Bakugo said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. You got in. Yeah, with 0 combat points, rescue points, Izuku clarified. Bakugo scoffed, looking away. Whatever. Don't think a fancy magic trick makes you a hero. You're still a pebble. It was an odd insult. Usually, Bakugo would call him bug, or trash. Pebble implied something hard. Something that could break a window if thrown hard enough. Oh. It's Deku. Uraraka Ochako popped up behind him, beaming. You made it. I'm so glad. I was worried about your arm. She reached out to grab his forearm. Izuku flinched, pulling his arm back instinctively. I'm fine. It's fine. Good morning, Uraraka-san. She blinked, surprised by his recoil, but her smile remained. Right. We're gonna be classmates. This is so exciting. If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. Lying in the doorway, wrapped in a yellow sleeping bag like a metamorphic caterpillar, was a man who looked like he hadn't slept since the pre-quirk era. He sipped a juice pouch. I'm your homeroom teacher, Aizawa Shota, the man said, unzipping the bag and standing up. He wore all black. His eyes were bloodshot. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. Time is limited. You kids are not rational enough. He reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a blue gym uniform. Put these on. Meet me on the grounds. Part 3 Exposed. The boys' locker room was a chaotic mix of testosterone and nerves. Man, I'm pumped, the redhead Kirishima said as he pulled his shirt off. I wonder what we're doing. Ceremony? Orientation? The teacher looked kinda scary. A small boy with great balls on his head whimpered. Did you see his eyes? Izuku stood in the corner, facing his locker. He unbuttoned his blazer slowly. He didn't want to take his shirt off. Underneath the white dress shirt, his arms were wrapped in compression bandages, but the bandages didn't cover everything. The scars ran up to his shoulders. They spiderwebbed across his right pectoral muscle, directly over his heart. Hey, Midoriya, right? Kirishima walked over, grinning. I'm Kirishima Aijiro. That thing you did with the robot? So manly. How does your quirk work? Is it magnetism? Not exactly, Izuku murmured. Is it alchemy? Sero asked, leaning in. Is it matter manipulation? Ojiro added. It's complicated, Izuku said. He took a breath and pulled his shirt off. The chatter in the locker room stopped. Through the gaps in the bandages, and across his chest where the skin was bare, the gold lines pulsed. They weren't tattoos. They were fissures. It looked like someone had taken a hammer to a glass boy and then glued him back together with liquid sunlight. The light was faint, but in the dim locker room, it was unmistakable. Whoa, Kirishima breathed. Dude. Are you okay? Izuku pulled the blue gym top on quickly, hiding the glow. I'm fine. It's just a side effect. High output causes structural stress. Structural stress? Kaminari, the electric boy, winced. That looks like you cracked your shell. Bakugo slammed his locker shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. He walked past Izuku, his shoulder checking Izuku's hard enough to make him stumble. Move, Bakugo hissed. Bakugo had seen the scars. Izuku saw the look in his eyes for a split second. It wasn't disgust. It was horror. Bakugo had spent years telling Izuku he was weak, fragile, breakable, seeing visual proof that Izuku was breaking, but from holding too much power, not too little, messed with Bakugo's worldview. Don't fall apart before I get to crush you, Bakugo muttered as he exited. Izuku rubbed his shoulder. The physical impact felt grounding. I won't, Izuku whispered. Part 4, the apprehension test. A quirk apprehension test? The class shouted in unison. What about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? Uraraka asked. If you're going to be heroes, you don't have time for such leisurely events, Aizawa deadpanned. UA is a freestyle school. That means I run my class how I see fit. He stood on the dirt field, the wind blowing his dark hair. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school without quirks. Today you use your quirks. Aizawa turned his gaze to Bakugo. Bakugo. You finished first in the entrance exam. What was your softball throw in middle school? 67 meters. Try it with your quirk. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He grinned, a savage expression. Die! Boom! The ball rocketed into the sky, propelled by a massive explosion. 705.2 meters, Aizawa read from his device. The class cheered. This looks fun. We can use our powers as much as we want. Fun? Aizawa's eyes narrowed. You have 3 years to become heroes. You think it's going to be fun? Right. Let's make it interesting. He looked at them with a predator's gaze. The student who ranks last in total points will be judged to have no potential, and will be punished with expulsion. The heir left the field. Expulsion? Uraraka cried. That's not fair. It's the first day. Natural disasters aren't fair, Aizawa said coldly. Villains aren't fair. Yui is here to teach you how to overturn that unfairness. He looked directly at Izuku. Go. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Izuku lined up against Ida. I need to be fast, Izuku thought. I could shorten the track. I could fold space so the finish line is right here. He looked at Aizawa. The teacher was watching him like a hawk. If I fold space, I might accidentally delete the other students. Start. Ida shot forward, engines roaring. Whoosh. 3.04 seconds. Izuku ran. He just ran. His legs pumped, his sneakers slapping the dirt. 7.02 seconds, the robot announced. Izuku panted. Average. Completely average. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku held the dynamometer. He squeezed. Reinforce the muscles, he told himself. Create carbon nanotubes in the muscle fibers. He tried. But as soon as he channeled the energy, the golden cracks on his arm flared hot. Pain shot up his shoulder. He flinched, losing focus. The energy leaked into the machine. Instead of registering a number, the metal handle of the device turned into soft, purple clay. It oozed through his fingers. Error, the machine beeped. Aizawa sighed, marking something on his clipboard. Midoriya. Do not transmute the equipment. You get 0 for this station. Sorry. Izuku dropped the clay. Test 3, standing long jump. Izuku stood at the line. Make the air solid. Step on it. He jumped. He created a small platform of density in the air. He stepped on it. Crack. The air didn't just solidify. It shattered like glass. A shockwave knocked Izuku backward. He landed face first in the sand, barely clearing the starting line. Bakugo laughed. A short bark of a laugh. Physics rejects you, Deku? Izuku spat out sand. He was failing. He was failing because he was trying to use a scalpel to hammer a nail. His power was absolute, and this test required moderation. He didn't know how to do moderation. Part 5, the liability. By the time they reached the ball throw, Izuku was dead last. He stood in the circle, the ball heavy in his hand. His arm throbbed. The bandages were starting to feel tight as his arm swelled slightly from the strain of containing the energy. Midoriya, Aizawa said. Izuku looked up. You're holding back. The class went quiet. I'm trying not to break anything, Izuku whispered. You're trying not to break yourself, Aizawa corrected. He walked closer, his scarf floating ominously. I saw the report from the entrance exam. You created a giant statue. You rewrote the composition of a 0-pointer. But look at you now. Aizawa pointed at the scoreboard. You are hesitating. A hero who hesitates gets people killed. If you cannot control your power, if you are too afraid of your own vessel cracking to save someone, then you are a liability. Izuku gripped the ball. But if I use it, I break. Then find a way to use it without breaking, Aizawa snapped. Or pack your bags. Izuku looked at the ball. He closed his eyes. He couldn't use transmutation to rewrite the air, that was too volatile. He couldn't create a cannon, that took too much time. He needed to give the ball agency. He remembered the bird he had accidentally created in the X-ray room when he was 4, though that was a false memory, a dream. No, he remembered the feeling of life. Don't just move, Izuku thought to the atoms in the ball. Fly. The hum in his head rose to a crescendo. It wasn't a roar this time, it was a song. He drew his arm back. Izuku! Uraraka shouted. You can do it, Izuku threw. At the exact moment the ball left his fingertips, he didn't push it with force. He pushed it with will. Be free. Genesis, aviary. The ball didn't fly in an arc. Mid-air 10 meters out, the white leather sphere exploded into light. It wasn't an explosion of fire, but of matter restructuring at the speed of thought. Feathers erupted from the core. Wings spanned 6 feet wide, unfurled from the baseball. A beak formed from the stitching. The ball turned into a hawk. But not a normal hawk. It was made of living chrome and white fire. Scree! The hawk shrieked, a sound that vibrated in everyone's teeth. It flapped its wings, generating a gust of wind that knocked Aizawa's hair back. It didn't fall. It climbed. It shot straight up, piercing the clouds, soaring higher and higher until it was just a speck of light against the sun. Izuku stood in the circle, his arm extended. Snap! The sound was wet and crunching. Izuku fell to his knees, clutching his right hand. His index finger was broken, purple and swollen. But worse, the gold light was bleeding through the bandages. A drop of golden liquid, not blood, but raw plasma, dripped onto the dirt. The device in Aizawa's hand beeped. Aizawa looked at the screen. He looked at the bird, which was now leaving the atmosphere. He turned the screen to the class. Infinity. It's alive, Aizawa muttered, his dry eyes wide. He didn't throw it. He gave it life so it could leave. The class was silent. Then, the chaos erupted. What? It turned into a bird. That's so cool. DKU. The explosion came from behind. Bakugo launched himself at Izuku. He wasn't thinking. He was reacting to the sheer impossibility of what he had just seen. A bird? From a ball? Tell me how you did that, you bastard. Bakugo's right hand, sparking with explosions, aimed for Izuku's face. Izuku didn't move. He was too busy trying not to scream from the pain in his finger. He looked up at Bakugo, his eyes glowing white. Stop, Izuku thought. But before he could accidentally turn Bakugo into a potted plant, a white cloth wrapped around Bakugo, binding his arms and mouth. GRRPH. Aizawa held the capture tape taut. His hair was floating. His eyes were glowing red. We are wasting time, Aizawa growled. Bakugo, stand down. Don't make me use my quirk again. It gives me dry eye. He dropped Bakugo, who fell to the dirt, seething. Aizawa walked over to Izuku. He looked at the boy's broken finger. He looked at the golden blood on the ground. You have a power that defies logic, Aizawa said quietly, so only Izuku could hear. But your body is still human. You found a way to act, but you still broke a finger. Izuku grit his teeth. I'm still standing. Aizawa stared at him for a long moment. Then, the corner of his mouth twitched up, barely. Go see Recovery Girl. Then get back here for the sit-ups. Part 6. The Biological Paradox. The nurse's office smelled of gummies and disinfectant. Recovery Girl, the youthful heroine, sat on her stool, looking at Izuku's hand through a magnifying glass. Oh dear, she clicked her tongue. Oh dear, can you fix it? Izuku asked. Usually, yes, she said. She kissed his forehead. A warm glow enveloped him. The bone in his finger snapped back into place. The swelling went down, but the gold cracks didn't vanish. In fact, they seemed to pulse angrily against her quirk. Recovery Girl pulled back, looking exhausted. My quirk works by accelerating your body's natural healing factor, she explained, handing him a gummy. But your body, it doesn't know what its natural state is anymore. She pointed to the scars. When you use your power, you are essentially rewriting your own biology to accommodate the energy. You are becoming less carbon-based. My quirk tries to restore you to a human baseline, but your body fights it. It wants to stay evolved. Izuku looked at his hand. It was healed, but the skin looked like cracked porcelain. So I'll never heal properly? Not with my quirk, she said sadly. You will scar. Every time you break, the gold will fill the cracks. Eventually, Midoriya, there might be more golden boy left. She patted his knee. Be careful. You are a precious vessel. Don't shatter yourself for a grade. Part 7, the bottom line. Izuku returned to the field just as the tests were concluding. He did the sit-ups, mediocre. He did the toe touch, average. Finally, the results were posted. Izuku closed his eyes. I'm last. I know I'm last. The total scores are simply the sum of your performance in each category, Aizawa said. He pressed a button. A hologram appeared. 1. Yaoyoro Zumomo. 2. Todoroki Shoto. 3. Bakugo Katsuki. 20. Midoriya Izuku. Izuku felt his stomach drop. Expulsion. By the way, Aizawa said, turning off the hologram. The expulsion was a logical ruse. Ha! The class screamed. It was a deception to draw out your maximum potential, Aizawa said, scratching his neck. That was obvious, Yaoyorozu said, sighing. I should have said something. Izuku's knees gave out. He collapsed onto the dirt. Oh, thank God. Aizawa looked down at him. Midoriya. Izuku looked up. Take this. Aizawa handed him a slip of paper. It's a pass to the support department. Go get some compression bracers. If you break your arms again, I will expel you. I don't care if you can make birds out of baseballs. A hero who can't move is useless. Yes, sir. Izuku bowed, his forehead touching the dirt. As the class walked back to the changing rooms, Aizawa watched them go. All Might peeked out from behind the corner of the building. A logical ruse? All Might whispered. You liar. You expelled the whole class last year. You really were going to cut him. He has zero control, Aizawa said, watching Izuku's back. But, he created life. That's not just a quirk. That's a burden. Aizawa turned to walk away. He has the potential to be the greatest hero. Or the greatest villain. I'm keeping him close so I can decide which one he becomes. Part 8, Gravity. The sun was setting as Izuku walked out of the school gates. He was exhausted. Every muscle ached. The golden cracks were itching under his uniform. He felt heavy. Hey! Deku! He turned. Uraraka was running toward him, accompanied by Ida. You're heading to the station, right? She asked, falling into step beside him. Let's walk together. Midoriya! Ida chopped his hand. Your finger. Is it healed? Mostly, Izuku said, hiding his hand in his pocket. That throw was amazing. Uraraka beamed. I've never seen anything like it. Infinite distance. You beat Ochako-chan at her own game, she laughed. It was a light, bubbly sound. Izuku looked at her. Throughout the day, he had felt like a monster. He had felt the fear of his classmates, the suspicion of his teacher, the rage of Bakugo. He felt the terrifying, cold hum of the universe demanding to be rewritten. But Uraraka didn't look at him like a monster. She looked at him like a friend. You know, Uraraka said, tilting her head. Deku sounds like Daikaru, right? Like you can do it. I think it's a cool hero name, Deku. Izuku muttered. He looked at his hand again. The hand that could destroy, create, and rewrite. Yeah, Izuku smiled, and for the first time that day, the gold light on his skin seemed to settle, warm and human. I think I like it too. They walked toward the sunset, 3 students in a world that was about to change forever. But for now, they were just kids walking home. And that was the most difficult creation of all, a moment of normalcy. Part 1, Vestments. The locker room was filled with the sound of zippers, Velcro, and the nervous shuffling of feet. The air was thick with the scent of new fabric and high expectations. Izuku Midoriya stared at the case in his hands. It was marked with the number 18. Costumes. Mineta squealed from across the bench, trying to pull on a diaper-like contraption. We're finally going to look like pros. Izuku opened his case. Inside lay the suit his mother had sent the design for, which the support company had constructed. It was green, a deep, forest green intended to honor All Might's old color scheme, though few remembered it. He pulled the fabric out. It felt distinct. To anyone else, it was high-grade poly-Kevlar weave. To Izuku, the suit was a collection of petroleum byproducts and synthetic polymers screaming for purpose. As he pulled the jumpsuit on, the material seemed to sigh. The moment it touched his skin, where the golden kintsugi scars pulsed rhythmically, the suit changed. It wasn't visible to the naked eye, but the molecular lattice of the fabric tightened. The weave aligned itself into a perfect geometric hexagonal grid, reinforcing itself without adding weight. He pulled on the red belt, the knee pads, and finally, the respirator mask. He didn't need the mask for filtration. He could turn poison gas into oxygen with a thought, but it helped him feel contained. It covered the freckles. It hid the human face, leaving only the glowing green eyes and the golden cracks that crept up his neck like ivy. Midoriya! Uraraka's voice came from the hallway. Izuku stepped out. The hallway leading to ground beta was dark, illuminated only by the strip lighting on the floor. Whoa, Uraraka breathed. She was wearing a tight pink and black suit. You look intense. Like a Spec Ops rabbit. Izuku managed a smile beneath his mask. You look great, Uraraka-san. Very aerodynamic. Thanks. It's a bit tight though, she laughed nervously. Together, they walked into the light. Ground Beta was an urban sprawl, a fake city built of concrete and steel. Waiting at the entrance was All Might, standing tall in his Golden Age costume, his cape fluttering in a wind that he seemed to generate himself. They say the clothes make the man, young heroes. All Might bellowed, his smile blinding. And behold! You are the embryos of justice, the class fanned out. They looked incredible. Motors, capes, armor. But when Izuku stepped into the line, a hush fell over the group nearest to him. It wasn't that his costume was flashy. It was simple. But the air around him warped slightly. The concrete beneath his red boots seemed to polish itself, the dust vanishing simply because he stood there. He radiated a low, terrifying static pressure. Bakugo stood a few feet away, clad in his massive grenade gauntlets. He didn't look at Izuku. He stared at the ground, his teeth grinding audibly. Now! All Might announced, pulling a box from his cape. Combat training. We will be conducting indoor battles. Hero Team versus Villain Team, Part 2, the lottery. The teams were drawn. Destiny, it seemed, had a sense of humor. Team A, Heroes Midoriya Izuku Uraraka Ochako. Team D, Villains Bakugo Katsuki Ida Tenya. It's fate, Ida said, adjusting his glasses as he stood beside Bakugo. I am paired with the top scorer, and we face the anomaly. A chance to prove that order triumphs over chaos. Bakugo didn't say a word. He just turned and walked toward the building marked as the villain hideout. Deku-kun? Uraraka tugged on Izuku's sleeve. Bakugo looks really scary. Like scarier than usual. Izuku watched Bakugo's retreating back. He could see the stress fractures in the air around Bakugo. The heat radiating from his palms was distorting the light. He's not scary, Izuku whispered, more to himself than her. He's fragile. He thinks the world is made of glass, and he's the hammer. He just doesn't know what to do when he hits something that doesn't break. Right, Uraraka gulped. Okay. What's the plan? Izuku looked at the building. It was 5 stories. Reinforced concrete. Steel rebar. Standard industrial layout. He closed his eyes. The blueprint of the building didn't appear in his mind. The building introduced itself to him. I am concrete. The walls whispered. I am cold. I am holding a weapon on the 5th floor. The weapon is on the 5th floor, north corner, Izuku stated, opening his eyes. The white glow in his irises faded back to green. Ida is guarding it. He's pacing. He's anxious. Bakugo is on the 2nd floor. He's waiting near the entrance. Uraraka stared at him. How do you know that? The building told me, Izuku said simply. Uraraka laughed nervously. You say the weirdest things, Deku-kun. Okay. So we avoid the 2nd floor? No, Izuku said, tightening his gloves. The fabric hissed. I go to the 2nd floor. You go to the 5th. I'll draw his fire. But I can't beat him in a fight, Uraraka. Not the way he wants. Izuku looked at his hands. The gold scars were itching. But I can build a cage he can't break out of. Part 3, First Contact. Hero Team, enter. All Might's voice crackled over the speakers. Izuku and Uraraka climbed through a 1st-floor window. The interior was dim, smelling of dust and oil. They moved silently through the corridors. Izuku didn't walk, he glided. He unconsciously smoothed the floor ahead of him, removing debris so they wouldn't make a sound. They reached the stairwell. Go, Izuku whispered. Uraraka nodded and touched herself, floating upward toward the higher floors. Izuku stood alone in the hallway. He waited. 3, 2, 1. Boom. The wall to his left exploded. Debris flew like shrapnel. Smoke billowed, hot and choking. From the dust, a demon emerged. Deku! Bakugo launched himself out of the smoke, a right hook primed with a massive explosion aimed directly at Izuku's face. Izuku didn't dodge. He didn't block. He clapped his hands together. Construct. The floorboards between them didn't just lift, they grew. The wood instantly elongated, weaving together like a basket, forming a thick, dense wall of timber in the blink of an eye. Crack boom! Bakugo's explosion slammed into the wooden wall. Splinters flew, fire scorched the surface, but the wall held. Don't ignore me! Bakugo roared, blasting through the charred wood. He was fast. Faster than middle school. He used his explosions to propel himself through the hole, spinning in midair to deliver a kick. Izuku stepped back. He reached out and touched the concrete pillar next to him. Flow. The solid concrete turned into a semi-solid viscous liquid for exactly 1 second. He pulled a ribbon of gray matter out of the pillar and whipped it forward. It solidified instantly in midair, becoming a jagged spear of stone blocking Bakugo's path. Bakugo blasted the stone, turning it to gravel. He landed, skidding on the floor, his eyes wild. Stop using cheap tricks! Bakugo screamed. Fight me! Use your damn fists! I don't want to fight you, Kaken, Izuku said calmly. His voice was distorted by the mask, sounding hollow. Fighting destroys. I'm here to secure the building. You think you're better than me? Bakugo lunged again. Right. Left. Feint. Izuku danced backward. Every time Bakugo punched, a shield of diamond-hard glass appeared from thin air to block it, or the floor rose up to trip him, or the ceiling lowered to force him to duck. Izuku wasn't fighting. He was editing the environment. He was the architect, and Bakugo was just an unwelcome tenant. You've always been like this. Bakugo shouted, blasting a hole in the floor to drop down and attack from below. Looking at everything like you own it. Like you're analyzing it. Izuku created a net of steel wires from the dust in the air to catch Bakugo's fist. I don't own it, Izuku said softly, as the wires strained against the explosions. I just listened to it. Part 4, The Gauntlet. In the observation room, the class watched in stunned silence. He's not hitting back, Kirishima noted, leaning forward. Midoriya hasn't thrown a single punch. He doesn't have to, Todoroki said quietly. His heterochromatic eyes were fixed on the screen. Look at the terrain. The hallway isn't straight anymore. He's warping the corridor to keep Bakugo away from the stairs. He's controlling the battlefield completely. It's frustrating to watch, All Might thought, clutching the microphone. Young Midoriya is afraid. He's afraid that if he touches young Bakugo directly, he might unmake him. On the screen, Bakugo stopped. He was breathing hard, sweat dripping down his chin. He stood at the end of a hallway that Izuku had twisted into a funhouse mirror of warped pipes and slanted floors. Bakugo raised his right arm. He grabbed the pin of his grenadier gauntlet. If you're not going to fight, Bakugo said, his voice terrifyingly calm, then I'll just blow you away until there's nothing left to fix. Young Bakugo, stop! All Might shouted into the mic. Are you trying to kill him? You'll bring the building down. He won't die if he dodges. Bakugo screamed. He pulled the pin. The world went white. A beam of concentrated heat and concussive force erupted from the gauntlet. It tore through the hallway, vaporizing the walls, the floor, the ceiling. It was a tunnel of pure destruction, heading straight for Izuku. Izuku stood in the path of the blast. Time slowed. He could feel the heat. He could hear the air molecules screaming as they were ripped apart. Destruction, the voice in his head whispered. Entropy. The end of things. If he dodged, the blast would continue down the hall. It would hit the structural support. The building would collapse. Uraraka was upstairs. The weapon was upstairs. I cannot destroy the blast, Izuku realized. To destroy energy is impossible. I have to convert it. He couldn't block it with a wall. A wall would just become shrapnel. He needed a sponge. Izuku slammed both hands onto the floor. The golden cracks on his arms flared so bright they shone through the green fabric of his suit. The light blinded the cameras. Genesis, Eden, the blast hit. Or rather, it tried to hit. The moment the fire touched the zone Izuku had created, reality hiccuped. The concrete floor, the steel walls, the rebar, everything in a 20-meter radius instantly lost its rigidity. It didn't melt. It transmuted. The gray industrial hallway exploded into green. The concrete floor erupted into a dense, 6-foot-high field of lush, wet, thick prairie grass. The walls turned into massive, spongy moss. The steel pipes bloomed into thick vines that wove together into a web. The explosions slammed into the vegetation. The grass was incinerated, yes. The moss burned. But the sheer density of the biomass, the moisture instantly created within the plants, absorbed the thermal energy. The shockwave was dampened by the soft, yielding earth that had replaced the concrete slab. The fire roared, but it didn't travel. It was smothered by a sudden, violent growth of jungle. When the smoke cleared, there was silence. Bakugo stood with his arm outstretched, smoke pouring from his gauntlet. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated to pinpricks. The hallway was gone. In its place was a greenhouse. The air smelled of burnt ozone and fresh, cut grass. And standing in the middle of the scorched garden, shielding his face with arms that were smoking and glowing gold, was Izuku. Part of his costume had burned away on the right shoulder. The skin underneath was cracked, gold light bleeding out like molten lava. You! Bakugo's voice trembled. You turned the floor into grass? Izuku lowered his arms. He looked exhausted. He looked sad. Concrete is brittle, Izuku rasped. Life is resilient. It absorbs better. Part 5, The Capture. From the comms. Uraraka's voice crackled in Izuku's ear. Deku! The whole building shook. Are you okay? I'm fine, Izuku said, though his legs felt like jelly. Bakugo is neutralized. Bakugo wasn't moving. He was staring at the flowers growing out of the wall where his explosion had hit. He looked like his entire understanding of the world had just shattered. Go for the weapon, Izuku commanded. Right. Upstairs, Uraraka used the distraction. Ida had been shaken by the tremor. What is happening down there? Ida yelled, holding the papier-mâché bomb. Is this structural failure? Comet home run! Uraraka floated a concrete pillar, which Izuku had loosened from the foundation unknowingly, and swung it. Debris flew. Ida ducked. Uraraka touched the weapon. Hero team wins! All Might shouted, his voice cracking slightly. The siren wailed. Down in the greenhouse hallway, Izuku exhaled. He slumped against the wall that was now covered in ivy. Bakugo finally moved. He dropped his arms to his sides. He walked slowly toward Izuku. He stopped 2 feet away. He didn't attack. He just looked at the golden scars pulsing on Izuku's exposed shoulder. You aren't even playing the same game, are you? Bakugo whispered. I'm not playing, Kaken, Izuku said, sliding down the wall to sit in the grass. I'm just trying to keep the pieces together. Bakugo stared at him for a second longer, a complex mix of hatred, fear, and inferiority swirling in his eyes. Then, he turned and walked away, kicking up flower petals with his heavy boots. Part 6, The Critique. The atmosphere in the monitoring room was heavy. When the students returned, no one cheered. They looked at Izuku with a mixture of awe and wariness. Well, All Might coughed, trying to bring the energy back. An intense battle. Now, who can tell me who the MVP of this match was? Yayorozu raised her hand instantly. It was Ida, she said. Eh? Izuku blinked. But we won. You won the match, Yayorozu said, her voice sharp and analytical. She looked at Izuku with intense scrutiny. But your methods were terrifyingly reckless, Midoriya-san. She pointed to the screen, which showed a replay of the hallway turning into a jungle. I have a creation quirk, Yayorozu explained. I create matter from the lipids in my body. I have to understand the molecular structure of everything I make. It takes immense concentration and resources. She walked over to the screen. What you did violates the law of conservation of mass. You turned concrete, silicates, into organic matter, carbon-based life. The energy required to break those atomic bonds and reform them instantly should have triggered a nuclear explosion. The fact that it didn't means you aren't just rearranging matter, you are sourcing it from somewhere else. Or you are rewriting the laws of physics in a localized area. She looked at him, her eyes pleading for an explanation. You compromise the structural integrity of a 5-story building to grow a garden. If your calculations were off by a fraction of a percent, the entire building would have collapsed on top of you and Bakugo. You prioritized a flashy defense over safety. Izuku looked down. You're right. I just didn't want him to get hurt by the recall. And Bakugo, Yaoyorozu turned to the blonde, who was sulking in the corner. You utilized a lethal attack indoors. That is disqualifying behavior for a hero. TCH, Bakugo spat. However, All Might interjected, sweating slightly. Young Ida was also quite stiff. But yes. Excellent analysis, young Yaoyorozu. The class moved on to the next match, but the tension remained. Todoroki Shoto watched Izuku from the back of the room. He looked at his own left hand, then at Izuku's glowing scars. He creates, Todoroki thought. I just produce. He is something else. Part 7, The Voices. The sun was setting by the time school ended. The orange light bathed the classroom in a warm glow. Izuku sat at his desk, packing his bag. His shoulder was bandaged again, fresh gauze covering the burns and the cracks. Midoriya. He looked up. All Might stood in the doorway, in his skeletal form, wearing a baggy yellow suit. All Might. Izuku stood up. Walk with me. They walked to the faculty lounge, which was empty. All Might made tea. He poured a cup for Izuku. Recovery girl says your skin is getting thinner, All Might said gently. In the areas where the cracks are. Izuku held the warm cup. He didn't drink. He stared at the liquid. I am tea, the liquid whispered. I am hot water and crushed leaves. I want to be vapor. Shut up, Izuku muttered under his breath. Excuse me? All Might asked. Not you, Izuku said quickly. The tea? It's loud. All Might sat down opposite him, his face grave. The voices? Izuku nodded. He put the cup down because his hand was shaking too much to hold it. It started getting worse after the exam, Izuku confessed. Before it was just a hum. Now everything speaks. The chair I'm sitting on tells me about the tree it used to be. The concrete walls scream about the weight of the roof. The air complains about the pollution. He gripped his hair, pulling at the green curls. And when I used my power today, when I turned the floor into grass, it felt good, All Might. It felt right. It felt like I was fixing a mistake. He looked up, tears streaming down his face. His eyes were glowing faintly. But that scares me. Because humans aren't supposed to decide what is a mistake, and what isn't. I looked at Bakugo's explosion, and I just decided it shouldn't exist. I decided a jungle should exist instead. Izuku tapped his chest, over his heart where the biggest scar lay. I feel like the more I use it, the less Izuku Midoriya there is, and the more the blueprint takes over. I'm scared that one day, I'll look at a villain, or a building, or a person, and I'll just decide they shouldn't exist. And I won't even feel bad about it. I'll just be editing. All Might reached across the table. He took Izuku's trembling, scarred hand in his own large, bony ones. You are crying, All Might said softly. Izuku blinked. What? You are crying because you are afraid of losing your humanity. All Might smiled, a sad, gentle expression. That fear? That guilt? That is the most human thing there is, my boy. All Might squeezed his hand. A god would not care if he erased a villain. A machine would not hesitate. But you built a meadow to save a boy who has bullied you for 10 years. You didn't erase him. You protected him. All Might stood up and walked around the table, placing a hand on Izuku's head. As long as you cry, Izuku, you are still here. And I will be here to remind you who you are. Izuku sniffed, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. The golden cracks on his hand dimmed, the aggressive pulse slowing to a gentle, warm rhythm. Thank you, All Might. Now, All Might said, changing the subject. Go home. Eat a lot of protein. Creating matter from nothing burns calories like you wouldn't believe. You're practically a nuclear reactor. Izuku laughed. It was a weak, watery sound, but it was real. Part 8, The Shadow. That night, Izuku dreamed. He dreamed he was floating in a void. There was no light, no sound, no matter. Just him. And far, far away, across the infinite expanse of nothingness, he saw a pair of red eyes. They weren't glowing with light. They were glowing with the absence of light. They were two black holes staring back at him. "Builder!" a voice whispered from the dark. It sounded like dust falling on a coffin. "You make such pretty cages." A hand reached out of the darkness. It was pale, dry, and decaying. It touched a star, and the star turned to ash. "But everything you build belongs to me in the end." Izuku woke up screaming, his bedroom walls trembling as they briefly turned into water before hardening back into plaster. He lay in bed, panting, clutching his chest. The gold scars were burning hot. Somewhere out there, the void was hungry. And it knew his name.